Hi everyone, I hope you're having a fabulous weekend. I'm sorry it took so long for me to get around to making this video. It's been a busy week. That said, the topic I want to talk about tonight is really serious and hits home for a lot of people, and for me personally it really hits home. I want to talk about the Black Lives Movement, or Black Lives Matter movement. I've been participating in some protests, and I'm very active and very passionate about this, because everyone deserves to feel like they matter in this world, and people from different ethnic backgrounds have not been made to feel that way, and that's not right. That said, I am supportive of Black Lives Matter, Brown Lives Matter, because Native Americans and those of Latin background have also been treated horribly just on the basis of their skin color. I want to share a couple of experiences and stories with you that are my own personal experiences, because even though I look pasty white, I am half Mexican. My biological father is a very dark Mexican man, and my biological mother looks like this. Growing up was really hard for my ethnic identity, because my biological grandmother on my mother's side was very racist and was not appreciative of my father, and would constantly make remarks like, oh, he isn't your father, and blah blah blah, which really messed with my head. My Mexican side of the family often said things like that too, but not like through my grandparents or my father or my aunts. They were all amazing. It was mostly some of my cousins who were just like, oh, you hardly speak Spanish, you are just acting Mexican, but you're not. And that sucked. So growing up was really hard. But what was the hardest thing, I think, was watching the discrimination that would occur because I was white and parts of my family were dark brown. And being mixed and having those identity issues, it was a challenge. The things that come to mind when I'm thinking about this and talking about this are, well, one thing that comes to mind really vividly is the first time that my grandfather's ethnicity was called into question around me. I must have been about 5 or 6 years old, and we were walking by the marina. There was all these cute little knotted trees, and I would climb them, and my grandfather would just sit and watch and, help me when I needed it, like a good grandfather should. And I remember coming down from one of these trees, and these two white ladies come up, and they're like, "Excuse me, sir, do you belong with this child? What are you doing with this child?" And then they immediately targeted me, this little kid, 5, 6 years old. "Who is this man to you? Do you belong with this man? Where are your parents?" And I'm like, so confused. And I, being little and not really knowing much Spanish, I couldn't say abuelito, so I said tito instead. And so I turned to my grandfather and I'm like, "Tito, why are they yelling at me?" And I hid behind him, and the white ladies should have seen that as, oh, yes, she belongs to this man. We should leave this family alone. But no, they didn't. They pressed the issue and kept pressing the issue until security came and everything got resolved, and then they carried on their merry way, blah blah blah. The thing that was really hard about that afterwards was I was so confused. And I turned to my grandfather and I'm like, why did that happen? And he had to explain to me that people were going to see us differently because we were a different color. And he said that that's not right, but that's just the way it is. And as a 5 or 6 year old, that was groundbreaking. That was world shattering. Fast forward a few years. I think I was like 7 or 8. We were at my grandparents' house, and they had a really nice house. It was like, I want to say 3-bedroom with a pool room, like a nice living room, dining room, and then what my grandmother called the no-no room because it was the visiting room, and you weren't allowed to go in it unless you were with an adult because there was so much glass stuff in there. Like, she kept porcelain dolls, fine china, pretty things. Cat, don't get into that. My cat's being a jerk. This is my cat, and he is a jerk. We were I think we were all visiting in the visiting room, and my grandfather had gone out the back to get something from the garage and left his gate key, and so he was trying to hop the fence to get into his own backyard because he'd forgotten his keys. And we weren't paying attention. We were just all talking and hanging out in the living room, and then the doorbell rang. We came to the door and it was police, and they asked us if my grandfather belonged to us, and of course we said yes. But what had happened was, because he was seen hopping the fence, he was pulled aside, and the police officer was like, are you trying to break into this house, blah blah blah, and was like freaking out on him. And my grandfather was like, no, if you go to the front door and you talk to the people inside, this is my home. Thankfully the police officer came to the door, but you know, if it were me hopping the fence, I don't think he would have batted an eye. I really don't. And it's because my grandfather was so dark. And that's messed up. They assumed that no one like him could be able to live in that neighborhood. And granted, there was a lot of us living in that house, but it was a nice house, and it was a nice neighborhood. It was pretty upscale. And he was discriminated against. And that wasn't the only time he was discriminated against. He was discriminated against trying to unlock his own gate. He was discriminated against getting into his own car. He was constantly being racially profiled because he was such a dark Mexican, and he worked hard his whole life to afford things. And he did get nice things because that's what he wanted for himself and his family. And that level of discrimination is really messed up. Fast forward many, many years. I think I was 16 years old. And I was walking with him in the park, and he was older and sickly and in a wheelchair, and I knew he was going to pass away soon, and I just wanted time with him. And we were in the park, and he had his oxygen tank, and we were walking, and I remember hearing this woman shout out, "That's not right for that young girl to be with that old man, that old Mexican man. That's not right." And I was just like, that's my grandfather. And even now that he's in a wheelchair with an oxygen tank, and I'm with him in my school uniform, because I went to a Christian school, he's being discriminated against. Even right now, in our mixed city. And that just shows that people of ethnicity are discriminated against every day of their lives until they die. And that's so wrong. So wrong. And it's not right. It's not fair. And we have to change that. We have to make a difference in this world and shape it the way it should be, because I don't want my children to grow up dealing with racism and discrimination. I want them to love who they want to love. I want them to be happy. I want them to have friends of all colors and all backgrounds, and I don't want them to discriminate, and I don't want them to be discriminated against. And that's the end of my rant. So I guess I have questions for you guys. What are your experiences on this matter? And how have you dealt with it? In other news, I asked you guys in my last video to vote for the name of my channel, and I'm still trying to figure out how to change the name of my channel. I asked if you guys would vote for either Witch Mom or Mer Mom. I kind of changed Mer Mom to Mer Mama because I like it. It just kind of rolls off the tongue a little bit better. But everyone voted Mer Mama, so that's what we're going with. So, thank you for listening to my rant. If there's anything you want me to talk about next time, leave that in the comments and I'll try to get to it. You have a wonderful night. Bye.